You know, for those of you who don't know me, I'm an addict in recovery. My bad. I'm an addict in recovery. I've got 10 months sobriety this time. In the last 20 years, I've accumulated just over 8 years sobriety. My longest stretch was 4.5 years. Unfortunately, that means people will judge me based on my past. A lot of people see addicts as less than. And I'm not just talking about substance abuse addiction either. There's all forms of addiction. Addiction is just escapism. Some form of coping, going to an external solution for an internal problem. That could be drugs, alcohol, gambling, shopping, sex. Actually, it's a lot more common than what most people think. Different forms of codependency. People pleasing is a good one. Being in avoidance, another one. One thing I've learned on this journey is just because somebody makes a bad decision doesn't make them a bad person. See, most of us are taught a very conditional form of love from a very young age. And it's unfortunate. I don't know the reasons behind it. I could go into the philosophical and spiritual reasons, but I'll make that in another video. But myself, as an example, I spent most of my life self-sabotaging my relationships because I was punishing myself for the infidelity of my father. I was at a very impressionable age and raised in a house of women who were angry and hurt, and rightfully so, because my father was not faithful to my mother. So I got to hear a lot about how basically he was a piece of shit and an asshole and all this other stuff, and it left a very deep-seated impression on me. So I was hell-bent on proving to myself, the world, and every woman I had ever been in any kind of intimate situation with, that no, not all men are like that. It's subconscious is a very weird thing, how it works. Even though consciously and in a place of ego, I was trying to combat that. At the same time, my subconscious was constantly looking for reinforcement of that negative belief. Validation, essentially. Because it had happened at such an impressionable age, it had become part of my identity that men were cheaters, liars, heartbreakers. What finally occurred to me was that I was fighting myself. Now, if you ask me how do I heal this wound, I'm not entirely sure. I'm working on it. But it is essentially a self-worth issue, a self-worth wound. I've done a lot of work on that, actually, quite a lot. I've realized that, yes, I am worthy of love, and I am worthy of respect and honesty, because that's what I give, and that I don't need any other person to validate that. I get my validation from source, from within. This would be what's considered a childhood trauma, childhood wound, divine masculine wound, even so much as a generational karma. This is one of the reasons, among many, that have contributed to my active addiction. Well, I'm no longer in active addiction. Let me rephrase that. As far as the rest of it, I had a severe abandonment wound that really I got from birth. I did not have the easiest birth on my mother. It almost killed her, as a matter of fact. I had apparently become partially detached, and so for the last 6 weeks of her pregnancy with me, she had actually been bleeding internally. So when she had me, she started hemorrhaging and almost died. Needless to say, I was whisked away immediately and put into an incubator because I weighed 4 pounds 2 ounces and I was 2 weeks premature. So I never got that immediate bonding moment with my mother that most children get. Matter of fact, I don't know the length of time before she could actually hold me, but I know it was significant enough that it impacted me. These are two of the main causes or core conditions of my addiction, or addictions, or whatever you want to call it at this point. I am in recovery. I am in sobriety at this point. And the only thing I can say is that through all kinds of different solutions, some 12-step stuff, some other faith-based stuff, ultimately I've learned that once that spiritual awakening happens and you have that conscious contact with your higher power, with God, the universe, source, the divine, whatever you label you want to prescribe to, that's where the healing begins. And healing hurts. It's a painful process. It really is. It's a struggle. One of the other points to this video is that never underestimate the strength of an addict. I've met a lot of people in recovery and in active addiction. And I tell you what, some of the kindest, most generous, loving, and caring people I've ever met, as well as some of the most resilient and strongest people I've ever met, were addicts. There's a lot of people out there who've judged me based on my past. And rightly so. I cannot deny that when in active addiction, I'm a complete malignant narcissist and an asshole. There's no doubt about it. I'll rob you and turn around and help you look for what I stole. Facts. That's when I'm under the influence. So, stereotypes are stereotypes for a reason. And I take full accountability and responsibility for everything and all the damage and all the pain I've caused when I was in active addiction. I don't blame anyone for walking away from me. They were protecting themselves from me, and I understand that wholeheartedly. And I will never hold that against anyone. So if you saw my video on accountability, that's what I'm talking about. That's accountability. But a lot of the people who have misjudged me, who have never suffered from any form of addiction, and only know what they've seen and said person's actions or other people's actions, and they just automatically stereotype. And that's not good or bad. It's a simple fact of society. Funny thing is, most of those people wouldn't last a day in my shoes or any other addict's shoes. That doesn't make them less than, though. Just like it doesn't make an addict less than. Because their particular issues come out in a different way. I'm not any less human than anyone else out there, nor am I any less deserving of love and respect than anyone else. And neither are you if you suffer from any form of addiction, whether it be codependency, alcohol, heroin, crack, cocaine, whatever, sex. You are not less than because of that. You are worthy and you are enough. Just because you've made bad choices doesn't make you a bad person.